Uh, I went through high school in Chicago, in a nice brand new high school in Chicago near Oak Park. And you could major in different areas of study. And I majored in art. After graduation, I was recruited by Donnelly and Company, which was the country's largest printer in Chicago. They printed Time and Life magazines, Sears and Roebuck catalogs, most of the phone books in America, and fine books. So I entered a kind of a deluxe apprenticeship because of my art in high school. But their program consisted of sending me to each department in the printing house, the composing room, the press rooms. They had all kinds of printing presses, rotogravure, offset, letterpress, sheet fed. It was a very large. But I did that for a while. And to avoid being drafted, I enlisted.
What year? Can you recall?
No.
That's okay.
And of course, there weren't any openings at the time. So you could stay at home and wait for an opening in the program, or go into the Air Force and just go through basic training, which is what I elected to do.
And so, can you talk about your training to become a pilot? Were you a pilot, George? Is that what your job was?
That's what I was trained for.
I see. What planes did you fly on that you can recall?
The primary trainer was an open cockpit.
No kidding.
P-223. And I was in the class of 43H. And the training consists of so the cadet program was divided into phases. Ground school, which was in Montgomery, Alabama.
Interesting. That was a lot of science and math, or what sort of training went into the ground school?
Everything. It was like navigation, meteorology, how to be an officer. That was at Maxwell Field. in Montgomery, Alabama. And from there you went to primary flight school, where they first taught you how to fly.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sent to a contract school owned by Park Aviation in St. Louis. And they had opened a field, a primary field in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, which was right on the Mississippi River.
Mm.
It was in the wintertime, cold.
Is that where you learned to fly?
Yes. Had no problem.
What plane were you flying?
PT-23.
A PT-23. Can you tell about that? Was that a single pilot? Was it you were flying alone?
No,
Or was that a plane with a large crew?
no, just front and back.
I see. And that was a fighter plane or reconnaissance? What was your job?
No, it was a primary flight. You learned to solo in it.
I see. Oh, I see. Okay.
And the instructors, weren't combat veterans returning to the States. They were bush pilots from all over the country.
I see.
So I had no problem doing that. When you completed that successfully, and interspersed with the flight training, you continued ground school, more navigation, meteorology.
What came next? What came next?
Then you went to basic training. And basic training was at Walnut Ridge, Arkansas, a military base. The instructors were military pilots. And we flew BT-13s and BT-15s. It was an all-metal airplane. Fixed landing gear. And I got a lot of hours in that.
As pilot?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Was that a single person plane or were there other people on board?
Normally single.
I see.
And you could fly all the hours you want. Practice. You just go to the flight line, jump in an airplane, and take off.
Fun. How long did you remain in basic? And what was next?
Two months probably. And anyway, I think I accumulated 127 hours in basic. And from basic you went to advanced. And you had two kinds of advanced. Single engine or multi-engine. And I wanted multi-engine, so I went to a base in Seymour, Indiana. and the twin engine radial engines, several different models. One was made of wood, plywood. They called it a bamboo bomber. So you learn formation flying, all the emergency procedures, engine out. Then you started learning formation flying and some instrument flying. When we graduated at Seymour, Indiana, we got our commission and our pilot's rating. And from there, I was sent to Gowan Field, Boise, Idaho, which was a B-24 training, operational training. There were two B-24 training bases in Idaho, Mountain Home and Gowan Field at Boise. And those fields was where a whole flight crew assembled and started practicing together. Pilot, co-pilot, navigator, engineer, bombardier, navigator, all the gunners. So anyway, I was assigned as a part of a crew as a co-pilot, which I didn't like. I liked being master of my own ship. And then I kind of went into a deep depression. Couldn't get out of bed in the morning. Sent me to the base hospital, gave me all kinds of tests trying to figure what was wrong. Finally, they just gave up and took me off of flying status. Didn't know what to do with me. So I was sent to Salt Lake Air Base in Salt Lake City, just outside. But they didn't know what to do with me either. So,
What was that like for you, George, to be doing that job instead of flying? Was that hard? It must have been very hard for you.
I was a very good pilot. In basic, I could do acrobatics better than any other pilot.
George, this hat you wear is special. For people who don't know, what's a flyboy?
I don't know.
You have your wings on your hat, right? Did that come off your uniform, or is that a memento from the past?
Yeah. I had my wings and I lost them somewhere. So Tom ordered this on Amazon, ordered new wings. All my Air Force uniforms are wool, and I stored them in the attic and the moths ate them. I had 2 sets of sheepskin flying suits, and the moths ate them.
You were talking about when we first sat down about a book. Tell me about that so I can remember.
About what?
I think you were saying that if I was going to read a book, I should read that book.
Yes, it described this cadet program precisely, very accurately,
Name of the book?
based on George McGovern's experience. He became a B-24 pilot, stationed in Italy, flying over the Alps, bombing Austria railroads, the railroad from Salzburg to Vienna. Every day they bombed it. And the Germans had those 88 millimeter anti-aircraft guns. Lots of flak. Well, the B-17 pilots operating out of England, bombing Germany. The B-17 was a very accommodating airplane. You could shoot half the wings off and it still flew. It had a high lift wing, not designed for speed. Whereas the B-24 had a Davis wing with totally different design. It was designed for speed.
Okay. Can you talk about the difference between our Air Force and the enemy Air Force during that struggle?
Germans had excellent fighter planes, as did Japan. The Zero was based on a Howard Hughes design that our Air Force wasn't interested because they didn't like dealing with Howard Hughes. So the Japanese took the design and ran with it. That's what the Zero was based on. It was a superior airplane. But it was easier to build the B-24 than it was to replace the crew that got shot down. That took longer to train. We built a string of air bases in Italy.
So, did you get back being a pilot?
Oh, in civilian life, I continued to fly.
Did you do that as a career or as a job? Who'd you fly for, or what did you fly?
A Learjet, took a job. I had a number of businesses of my own, plastic building materials. And I raised money by selling stock in the company. And so I had some experience on taking companies public. There was a company in Eugene, Jones Veneer and Plywood was world's largest manufacturer of printed wall paneling. Harold Jones imported boatloads of thin 1/8-inch mahogany plywood. Turned to his master millwright. Why don't you do it? And he did in his garage. He manufactured his own machines, specialized machinery, and industry ate it up. Well, he couldn't keep up with his orders. And his doctor knew me, and he told, you ought to call George Hermach. He could help you.
Oh, nice.
And he did. So I agreed to be an internal consultant,
Nice.
not an employee. So I helped him. And he doubled his sales and his profits every month. So, and of course, the more you grow, the more capital you have to have. Nobody pays you in advance. So I recognized that it was an ideal initial public offering. So I contacted the brokers I knew, and they gobbled it up. And it was a very successful public offering. Well, anyway, when I took moldings public, Tom Rash got a check for $11 million. So the first thing he did was buy a Learjet. And the Learjet requires 2 pilots. One pilot has to be type rated. That means they get special training in that exact make and model of aircraft. The second pilot, all they need is a multi-engine rating, which I had.
Yeah.
So and my own business started out as Plastic Products Company, which was plastic building materials. I recognized that the building industry sold its products by the trainload, whereas the plastics industry sold their products by the pound. They didn't speak the same language, so they needed a bridge. I became the bridge. So eventually, my company became Architectural Plastics Corporation. So I bought an airplane. So I was visiting architects all over the West. First airplane was a plywood plane, a Belenka. It had a small engine, very economical. And one day I landed at an airport and I saw this nice 47 Bonanza. So I bought it, traded the Belenka in. That was a fine airplane. Flew it all over. Put my 4 kids in the back till they got too big for that. So I had to buy a bigger airplane. So I bought a Cessna 195, which was Cessna's first attempt at a business airplane. It had a big back seat, big radial engine.
I'm gonna kind of redirect here because there's a meeting that happens here in 12 minutes. So I have two particular questions that I want to ask. One is, what's it like to be 101 years old? The difference in your lifetime, things have changed so much in over 100 years, right? What's the biggest lesson you take out of that?
Keep active, keep engaged, keep challenged mentally and physically.
The other question is this. What would you say to young people these days?
Get into a small company that's growing and has good leadership and grow with it.